Bring this meeting to order. I am going to be playing the part of Clint Scherf tonight. He is at a family obligation. So what we are going to do to begin this meeting, and thank you for being here, and just any last minute blue sheets that haven't come in, make sure if you're holding those to get that to our city recorder. And we will begin tonight with an invocation, and that will be by Councillor Schloegel.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen.
All right, and will you please join me and stand for the flag salute? Thank you, and now we will have a roll call, and we'll start with Councillor Schloegel.
Here.
Here. Here.
Here. Here.
Here. Joel King here.
And I'm also here, so thank you. And tonight we have as our first and only agenda item, a resolution authorizing the city manager to adjust the salary schedules for non-bargaining employees. And I believe we have a presentation from staff.
Thank you, Mandy. I just want to express my sincere appreciation to you, Mandy, to all of our colleagues and to the City Council for the professionalism, the dedication, and thoughtfulness that you've demonstrated through the discussion surrounding the non-bargaining salary schedule. I recognize that addressing compensation, particularly in a public forum, can be both sensitive and highly visible. I'm deeply grateful for the respectful and measured way in which everyone has remained focused on this core issue. Your commitment to thoughtful dialogue, even under public scrutiny, reflects the strength of our shared values and our collective dedication to fairness, transparency, and organizational integrity. Thank you for keeping the well-being of our team and the community in the heart of this process. Thank you, Council.
Thank you very much, Aaron. Everyone, I would like to introduce Dr. Victoria McGrath. She is the consultant that performed our classification and compensation study for us. So with that, I'll hand it over to you, Dr. McGrath. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. And can everybody see me and hear me? Because I can't see you. There's no camera. So just want to make sure you can all hear me.
Yeah.
You can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you. It's like, are you there? Thank you very much. And I'm trying to get my PowerPoint to function here. So again, thank you very much for the opportunity to join you this evening. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of give you a brief overview of the compensation study, what we did, how we did it, etc. And then I believe answer any questions that you may have at the end. As I indicated, I'm Dr. Victoria McGrath. I'm CEO of McGrath Human Resources Group. We're a firm that was established in the year 2000, so we're celebrating our 25th anniversary of being in business. There's technically two sides to the business. McGrath Consulting Group, Inc. is the parent company, and that does public safety consulting, police, fire, EMS, and dispatch from the county level on down. We broke out in 2012 to McGrath Human Resources Group because people thought we only did police, fire, EMS, and dispatch, and actually we work with the entire organization, the same series from the county level on down. So all of our Our clients are public sector. Currently, I just updated the client list yesterday. We have now reached over 640 different clients in 41 different states, and we've had the pleasure of working in your state for a number of occasions. In fact, I did a presentation for one of your neighbors last night at their meeting. We do specialize in compensation studies, and so that is our main bread and butter. And in addition to that, we might look at policies and procedures, performance management, job description, things of that nature. So we're very HR focused. In order to conduct this study, we had interviews with administration and with department leaders. Even though we've worked with a myriad of municipalities, we still don't know you. And so we needed to make sure that we understood your positions, we understood the challenges and issues you might have with your current compensation systems for the non-bargaining groups. And, you know, sometimes job titles can be very misleading. And so we made sure we talked with each department director and said, okay, what does this title actually do? Because sometimes, like I said, you may, an example, we had an equipment operator and it turned out to be that it really wasn't an equipment operator, it was somebody that ran a garbage truck. So making sure we understood your organization. We then looked at your current compensation system, the job descriptions, your policies for non-represented positions. And the union positions were not included in the study. However, we did need to look at some of those positions in order to determine whether or not there was compression between the union and non-union positions, which can very easily happen when you have multiple salary schedules. We did ask employees to complete something called a position questionnaire. It's an online survey. It evaluates and looks at a job in 13 different competencies. And that helps us look at the internal equity across the organization. For your non-bargaining group, we have 3 separate salary schedules, and sometimes we can have inconsistencies in how things are being paid from one salary schedule to the next. And so that's a very valuable tool to help us at least place positions within the organizations, but it's also very important in the state of Oregon where you have your pay equity laws. And so making sure that we have positions that have similar types of responsibilities, education, aligned in the same pay band. We did solicit data from a number of public organizations. We collect their salary schedules, so the minimum, midpoint, and maximum. We also try to collect incumbent salary, what people are actually making in the position, because sometimes that gives us a truer reflection of the market than what a salary range does. We're having a lot of issues over the past several years with the type of economy that we've had where the salary range may not be representative of what people are actually making or where people are being hired into. We find that sometimes the minimum is not necessarily the minimum. They're going to hire higher than the minimum. So incumbent data kind of gives us a nice grounding as to where people are actually being paid. Once we had the structure, once we had the data, we talked with administration, what do you want to do with it, and then built the structure that you see, which really mimics your current salary schedule. It's the same number of steps, the same percentage in between the steps. It's now aligned a little bit differently, and we'll talk about that shortly. I'm not going to talk about it this evening, but we were asked to collect information on benefits. That is in the executive report as to where you stand with benefits. Benefits are a little bit harder to change, especially when it comes to health insurance. That's something that you do need to work with a benefits broker on. We're only comparing where you stand in the market in the way of costs to other municipalities. And so that needs to have a deeper dive with your benefits consultant. Before we get into the project, something that's very valuable to us is to look at the demographics of your organization. That can definitely give us a real good handle on what type of compensation system might be appropriate for you. And I think a couple of pieces of information that I've pulled out that are worthy of noting is that 31% of your workforce has less than 4 years of service, and of that, 13% are under the age of 40. This could be a little bit of a concern because I'm going to be very generic here and very stereotypical, but usually what we find is that this is the area that employees are much more mobile. They don't have a lot of commitment to an organization. As one of my clients last year called it, it's the shiny object generation. If they can make $2 over here, even if it's a totally different profession, they're going to move over to that other group. Or if my friends are moving to a different state, I'm going to go move along with them. It's a very mobile workforce. What is interesting is 77% of your workforce is between the age of 40 and 59. This typically is a more stable workforce. They do not have a tendency to jump to other organizations. However, with that being said, they're also very highly valuable because they have this experience, they have the knowledge, and so therefore it can be very attractive to have another organization attempt to steal them from you because of their vast amount of experience. And then a separate piece is 54% is over the age of 50, which means you need to start looking at succession planning, because as these folks walk out with all of their institutional knowledge, who are you going to have in the background ready and prepared in order to take their places? So even though this study focuses primarily on compensation, what we're seeing here is that our compensation system really needs to look at recruitment and retention. How are you going to keep that 31% that has under 4 years of experience? How are you going to not have that middle group being stolen from other organizations, as well as, what are you going to start doing for succession planning? And so usually when we look at total compensation, we're looking at compensation, benefits, recognition, and well-being. And we did not cover all of those topics, but those are things that you definitely need to look at when you're looking at your total compensation package. This is one area that we had a lot of discussion on, is who do we have and who do we get the salary data from? And I do need to apologize because initially we were going to only use the union comps. We then decided to expand that, and I even noticed today, after 4 people have read the report, it still talks about just union comps, and because that was the initial thing. So we did use the union comps, the comps that have previously been established and that you have utilized with your union bargaining groups over the years, and then we did expand that list a little bit further to make sure that we had a little bit more robust data set. In addition to that, we spend a lot of time on the data. And what we do is we will eliminate any outliers. So I have a formula that I developed with, in conjunction, the World at Work, which is a formula called the National Compensation Association. It's a formula that actually will look at the data set, and based upon that formula, we'll throw out anything that might be considered too high or too low. We do that per position. So you may have Lake Oswego in one data set, but you might not have it in another job position, because again, it doesn't go above or below that formula. That formula equates to something very similar to 1 or 2 standard deviations above the average. So we do spend considerable time. I've said this for 25 years, so this is not a reflection of the elected officials sitting here. Elected officials want me to put all the low-paying municipalities in. Employees want me to put all the high-paying municipalities in, and I don't make either one of you happy. We're going to definitely make sure we do not skew that average one way or the other. The other thing we do is we then develop something called a comp ratio. A comp ratio is then looking at what's the ratio of your step 1, for example, to the average market minimum of those benchmark positions. And notice I said benchmark positions. There is no way, and there never has been in 25 years of doing this, that we will get a data set that is for every job title that you have. The positions do not maybe exist in other organizations, or the data is just not solid enough for us to be very confident in using it. So we do end up establishing a list of benchmark positions that we will then compare those positions to. We try to do as many positions as possible, and that's because we collect the organization's salary ranges. So therefore, we are the ones that are aligning their positions to your positions, making sure that we have a really good match of positions. Obviously, you're never going to find the exact position, but we have criteria that we look at to make sure that it is at least a reasonable facsimile of the position that you have. 50% comp ratio would mean that the position's at the average market rate, which is where you want to be. Now, obviously, we put a range around that because you can't get to that exact number for every position. And so we used to have a 10% range. We changed that in relationship to what others are doing in compensation methodology to anything that's 45%, lower than 45% is considered to be maybe out of market and really needs to be evaluated and looked at in comparison to the market. So when we use that comp ratio and when we look at those benchmark positions, you have about 93% of the benchmark positions that are under market. They are below the 45%, and so therefore they really need to have some realignment in order to get them at or closer to that average market rate. You do have several positions, however, that are aligned with the market, and we really didn't have to do anything with them. We also look at the maximum. Maximums don't mean a lot to me, and 78% of the positions do not have the same earning capacity as other organizations. That's not an alarming number for me because salary schedules are built very, very differently. I'm working on 3 projects right now where I have a salary range that's 40% from minimum to maximum. I have another one that I'm just starting and they currently have 65% from their minimum to the maximum. So maximums are a nice number to have, but it really isn't something that I'm going to get very excited over about, that you don't have that same earning capacity as other folks do. The key number is, what are your incumbents making in relationship to the average market rate? And in this case, you do have 61% of the positions are under market, 39 are aligned with the market. Now, we need to be cautious when we look at this because we do need to look at tenure. I would expect to see individuals in your 39 to 44% comp ratio because they are at the lower end of the salary range. And if you recall, we've got close to 31% that have less than 4 years of experience. So that's probably where this group is landing in this ratio. I'm not also concerned either that you have folks that are above the 50th, the comp ratio, because again, you've got longer tenured employees. They've been here, they've moved themselves through that salary range through their tenure, and that's fine. The group I am worried about is the group between 0 and 29. These are folks that are obviously at the lower end of the salary range in positions that are no longer competitive with the external market. So we need to look at those and make some adjustments. You have 7 different salary schedules. 4 of those are subject to negotiations, and then you have 3 that we are looking at today. They range from 7 steps to 10 steps. They start at 4%, they go down to 2%. And when you have multiple salary schedules through no fault of anybody, you're bargaining these, they're setting the schedules for the other 3, all of a sudden what starts happening is something called compression, where all these salary schedules start merging together, and we're having a hard time differentiating between those positions. And it sometimes becomes a real tug if I'm an individual and I want to take a promotion, and when I look at that new salary range, I'm at the top of that range, or I might be taking a pay cut as a result of it. So one of the things that we really needed to look at is, how do all those salaries align? And with the 3 schedules that you have that we're talking about today, what's very unique, and I don't see very often at all, is that every job title really has its own salary range. And when you really start looking at those salary ranges, in some cases, there's very little difference between those ranges, a couple $100. So why do you need all of those different salary ranges? Why can't we start grouping positions together that have similar type responsibilities, similar types of market, and putting them in a single pay grade instead of having each position have its own pay grade? I did take all 3 of those salary schedules and blended them all together. You have a lot of hierarchy compression. I mean, it's again hard to tell why do you have these different salary ranges? Why does it need it? You also, when we do these schedules, another type of compression we'll talk about is in-range compression. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but it's basically when, you know, I've been here for 5 years and I'm on I'm making the same as somebody who might has just been hired. So we needed to look at that once we put the actual salary schedule together. And compression really does affect retention. If people don't feel like they're either moving through the salary schedule or it doesn't make sense for them to take a promotion, it's going to affect succession planning. Why should I learn these types of things? And sometimes it can really affect employee satisfaction. We see a lot of compression issues, especially in public safety, police departments. You don't have a fire department. We see them in fire departments, but something we have to be very cognizant of when we look at what's the highest union position in relationship to the supervisor position, which is in the non-bargaining group. So when we look at developing a salary schedule, one of the things we ask is, what's your compensation philosophy? Where do you want to be within the market? And we do have some organizations that want to lead the market. They want to be the one that's setting the pace. I would say in 25 years, the vast preponderance, probably 90% of municipal employers want to be at the average market rate. And then we do have some clients every now and then that we have to follow that market because of financial issues or concerns that they have to deal with. So in developing your schedule, everything was set to the average market rate. And as I said previously, that average is looked at and evaluated, and any outliers are eliminated from that. What I did was I actually integrated all 3 of these non-union schedules and built one schedule. That was a really good way to really give you a solid infrastructure and making sure we have compression issues, we've eliminated hierarchy issues, and more importantly, we've looked at internal equity in order to make sure that we don't have any issues with your pay equity laws. As I said earlier, it really mirrors those 3 schedules. There's 10 steps, there's 4% between each step, and step 6 represents the average market rate. What's an average market rate? Average market rate means that I should be reaching that number typically within 4 to 7 years. It means I'm fully capable and competent of doing the job. In this case, you have 5 steps before that. That allows you the opportunity for hiring different folks. So if you've got an applicant and they have just the minimum skills and knowledge needed for the job, they're going to start at step 1, but you do have the opportunity to hire up to step 4 if you find somebody that knocks on your door and wants to work with you that has a skill set that's very beneficial. They have some years of experience, they have some education, they have some knowledge. And so that allows a person then to work their way through up to that average market rate. And again, the schedule allowed me, by putting them all together, to minimize the compression between union and non-union positions. That really means, where does that overlap end? You still might have a long tenured employee making more than a brand new supervisor. But at what point does that supervisor's pay range then outpace that, that employee? The other issue that compounds compression that you have to look at is overtime. How much overtime is allotted for these positions? That's going to primarily affect your police department, but if my salary plus overtime means that I'm making more than the person that supervises me, that can obviously very much stifle any type of promotional opportunities, and you're going to be stagnant in getting people to want to take those higher level positions. Once we determine what the step schedule looks like, then we have to place positions. And this is sometimes where people all of a sudden become compensation experts, and then they say, oh, but your market number isn't the same. Well, you're right. We look at 4 different factors that have to be considered in placing a position. The first one, obviously, is the external market. Actually, I take that back. The first one is actually the position analysis. The position questionnaires that the employees completed, as I said before, evaluates a job into 13 different competencies. It then assigns points to those competencies. And initially what we'll do is we'll group positions that have similar points together and say, okay, they've got, you know, a lot of the basic skills, education, knowledge, decision making, and so therefore we should align them. However, what we also then need to take into account is the market. So you might have this group of positions, and some people might end up in pay grade E, some might be in pay grade F, because the market is dictating that it should be that way. The third thing we're going to look at is compression. Where does that superior subordinate, or if you have levels of positions, is there enough distance that I want to go to that next level and take on that additional responsibility? And then also your internal comparability. Are there other positions that are in that same department that may need to all be in the same pay grade because they're cross-trained, they work together, they're a team, etc. So anytime you make a decision to try to move a position, you have to take a look at how is that going to affect all these components. So it is not just market driven. You need to look at all 4, and you also need to make sure that you are comparing positions appropriately. Once we have the schedule built, I place people. And what I do is I place people to the step closest to what they're currently making without a pay decrease, or place them to the minimum step 1 of the salary range if they're below that salary range. I do not take into account their years in position. So we might have somebody that's going to step 1 who might be here for 5 or 6 years. And that's when in-range compression can occur, which I talked about earlier. I know the city has done some work on trying to minimize some of that in-range compression, and that's something you really need to work on, either all at once or phased in, and to make sure that, you know, you're not hiring somebody that's now going to be placed on a step higher than what your current employee is making. That usually does not bring a lot of good morale. Need to manage the structure. That's something that needs to be done. I would guess by the non-union market data, it hasn't been done that well, and that is annually you need to look at how are you going to increase that salary schedule. Typically in your case, you could look at you know, type of economic indicators, but it's also going to be looking at what have you done with your union employees that you now need to make sure that you then do something similar to your non-bargaining employees. Your non-bargaining employees are just as important as your union employees. The only difference is they don't have somebody to speak for them. And then obviously the step movement, I think it's done on your anniversary date. I don't remember off the top of my head. So it's either done once the time period or anniversary date. Like I said before, I did do some benefit considerations. They are in the report. You can read them: health insurance, time off, payout. I was asked to look at workers' compensation payouts. We did that as well. And those are things that you can take a look at. And my closing comment is, you know, elected officials, you know, you, first of all, you know, thank you for taking the time to dedicate your free time in order to serving your community. But you were elected to serve your constituents. And the only way you do that is through the skills and talents of the employees that are there within your organization. And, you know, investing in your employees is actually an investment into your community. So with that, I'm going to stop talking, and I will entertain any questions that anybody has.
Thank you.
I think Mandy has like 4 slides, and then we'll open up to all questions. Is that what you're thinking, Mandy?
Yeah, before I start on that,
Unless they have questions.
yeah, are there questions you have for Dr. McGrath?
And I'll stick around if you know, till you need me.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay. Well, good evening, council, members of the audience. I am Mandy Hayes. I'm the HR director for Grants Pass, and we're here this evening to continue the discussion of non-bargaining compensation. This evening, I will be seeking direction from council. The proposed salary schedule changes are intended to solve internal pay compression, pay fair wages, prevent turnover, and improve recruitment. This is in alignment with the council goals of leadership and also provides cooperative shared leadership. The changes reflected in the proposed salary schedule are not based on one piece of information, as you heard from Dr. McGrath this evening. The proposed salary changes utilized a methodology that incorporated external and internal factors, as well as the future forecasting to prevent further compression and turnover. This methodology used in the study is consistently used in classification and compensation studies. However, if council prefers that we utilize a different methodology, please advise me. Whoop, that was quick. I have presented to you earlier this week for the IAFF parameters for the fire department wage increases effective January 1 of 2026, so in just a few short months. I will come to you again in the next few weeks for parameters for the Grants Pass the GPEA Grants Pass Employee Association, as well as the Teamsters Union Group. On July 1, GPEA and Teamsters are scheduled to receive an increase. There are no increases scheduled for the non-bargaining employee group. They are the only employee group without scheduled increases. So your call for action this evening is to consider approving the wage adjustments as proposed, which would adopt the reconfigured salary schedule and proposed step placement, approve the alignment of the holiday and vacation amounts for internal equity, approve the longevity incentive of 1% for 10 years of service and 2% for 15 years of service. That is not cumulative. The maximum incentive is 2%. Of the 6 employee groups here in Grants Pass, the non-bargaining group is the only employee group that does not receive this incentive. And then approve the reclassification of the Information Technology Director, the Chief Financial Officer, and the Utility Billing Supervisor. And I want to call out, reclassification does not result in increased FTE. It simply corrects the job title to the actual duties performed. An FTE is full-time employee, so these changes does not result in any additional personnel. The alternatives for council to consider is providing staff direction on desired changes to the proposal, provide direction for council goals in addressing the non-bargaining compensation, or maintain the current salary schedule. And I'm going to double back real quick. I think I missed something. The goals, again, were to solve the internal pay compression, pay fair wages, prevent turnover, and improve recruitment. Please advise me.
Thank you, Mandy. So are there questions from council? Sorry, I didn't want to.
I was just wanting Mandy to go ahead and put the consultant back up on the
Oh,
screen, please.
gotcha. There you are. Hello, Dr. McGrath. Welcome back.
Hello, thank you.
And thank you to both of you. And so I wanted to ask for questions from council, and I see Rob. So Rob.
Hi, I have a question, I think probably for Dr. McGrath. On slide 10 of your presentation, where it says compression issues, in-range compression, longer tenured employees make close to or less than a new employee. Unless the new employee is of much greater experience or higher ability, can you explain how that can happen?
Sure. In your current schedule, it's not going to happen other than what you just indicated, that, you've got somebody that's on step 3 and you hire somebody that has a similar position in the same position and you hire them at step 4 or step 5. When in-range compression really happens is when we realign the salary schedule, and as I said before, we place people on the step closest to what they're currently making. So that's when you might have somebody that might be at step 10 on your current schedule, and they might come in at step 4, I'm being exaggerating here, and then you've got a number of people that are already have less experience and they're at step 4 or step 3 as well. So in-range compression is going to happen when we realign the positions onto the updated salary schedule. But a good question, thank you.
So in-range compression, the way you're describing it, would basically be a self-inflicted wound because it really isn't really happening now, particularly unless you have specific examples, but it could be a result of reconfiguration. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and because if you're taking your salary schedule and, your salary schedule is aligned here, and I don't know if I think you can see me, and then all of a sudden you shift that salary schedule this way, you're going to have people that were at the top of the range are going to end up being in the middle into the lower end of the range. And so that sometimes it's just going to happen, especially if you're not keeping those salary schedules up on a very regular basis. It might be very exasperated. So yes, that can happen with any type of salary schedule. The question then becomes, how much financially can you cure it or alleviate that? And I think I just want to make sure that we clarify that the number of steps does not equal years of service. So basically what I would be looking at for alleviating in-range compression is if I've been here for 8 years, I need to be at least at step 6 or above, because I should be at or above the average market rate. Doesn't mean that if I've been here for 10 years, I have to go to step 10. Mm-hmm. So we typically look at where is that position or where is that person now around where we have the established average market rate.
And I'll just jump in real quick. We do have that in-range compression occur when we're hiring new employees right now. So when they come in with desired certifications and education and experience, which are the bona fide factors of the Oregon pay laws, if we place them higher than the tenured employees, then we're in that compression cycle.
I guess that's what I said earlier, though. If the new person has higher qualifications, then that would make perfect sense. But otherwise, I'm not hearing that we actually have that issue now, but it's something that could be created or something that would need to be avoided by this so-called improved schedule. We would want to avoid it, but we don't necessarily have that problem.
We are having that problem. When we're hiring employees, we're having to move some of the existing employees higher in the ranges to ensure that we're sticking with the bona fide factors of pay equity. Right now, we're having that problem.
But, okay, I guess I don't understand. I understood that you have the problem if you're hiring a new person that has more credentials than the existing person. Okay, that would make perfect sense. But as far as people of equal qualifications, I don't know that we have the problem. You know, you haven't said that, but it doesn't sound like we have that problem now. People have equal qualifications, and I guess that's my question. It sounds like a problem that we're trying to avoid if we move forward.
We are experiencing that problem in all of the employee groups.
Even with equal experience or equal,
Bona fide factors,
yeah,
skills,
you've got
education.
some people that have been here for maybe 2 years more, but someone with similar experience is placed at the same step they are, and so that's that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Why would that be?
Well, I'll chime in here, and Mandy, you can correct me if I'm wrong. It's because your salary ranges, what you're starting at, are not competitive. And so you can't start them at step 1 or step 2 or somebody below them because that's no longer a competitive wage.
Exactly.
Historically, non-bargaining has not been receiving over the past 6 to 10 years the same cost of living as the bargaining units. So our salary schedules are behind all other salary schedules that have stayed competitive. Therefore, having to start someone at 1 rarely happens now for non-bargaining because our non-bargaining has not been provided the same steps as the bargaining units over the years.
Joel.
I appreciate the presentation. I appreciate you spending your time or investing your time with us. I did a little bit of homework, and I'm an amateur. But there are valid reasons under merit pay for a discrepancy in pay, correct?
Correct.
Education's one of those.
Yes.
So if a person is hired with higher education, it's not a violation of merit pay to give them a higher salary, because that's one of the options.
Right, bona fide factor.
You have bona fide factor. So that can happen, and that's, I don't know if you want to call that compression or not. Compression isn't a good thing. So the other thing is I have 2 more objectives. One is the long-term sustainability of pensions and benefits, and avoiding tax increases, and getting through economic downturns and recessions with limited revenue sources, especially where we're at right now with our business community and what's happening in the town. And the 3 that we have are very valuable because we need to be competitive, and we need to reward good people because we got good people. But these other things are there as well, and I'd like to see those added as objectives as well. The one question I have, and it's of a technical nature, the justification for the steps, and this is for our guests here, and our with all due respect. So the different steps are indicative of experience and ability to do the job, right? So as you get better at doing your job, you go to the next step, and you go to the next step. And if you don't get a satisfactory job rating, you don't go to the next step because you got some things to work on before you go there. Mm-hmm. The thing that I don't understand is under the new proposed systems. I used to work for the federal government. Okay. Mm-hmm. Once you were stepped out at step 10, to go back to step 4 or 5 and then get those automatic increases with satisfactory job ratings for what you've already done and doing the same job and being at that job for 10 years doesn't seem appropriate to me. And so what the federal government would do is they would take step 10, you wouldn't go, there's no step 11. And we don't go back to step 4. You get all you get when you max out because you've been at the job a long time, you know the job. My learning of my job when I was at step 10 was I didn't learn as much as I did when I was at step 1, and I didn't become, I was already efficient when I was at step 10. So then the only thing I got after step 10, I didn't go back to step 4 under a increase in salary and then have another 6 steps to increase, representing my increased efficiency, I would stay at step 10 and I would only get the cost of living. Well, what's the difference? Why are we doing this differently?
Well, the major difference of why you're doing it differently is that, as I don't know who said it because I can't see you folks, but you know, the non-representative salary schedules have not been updated. So the only reason if I'm at step 8 and I'm going down to step 5 is because we are updating those salary schedules to be more competitive. Once you have them in place, you're not going to go backwards again unless, of course, you don't keep the salary schedule up and we end up having to do this whole study again 4 or 5 years down the road, and you have to realign all those positions. So once you have this in place, if I'm at step 10, once I get there, you're exactly right. You're not going to go any further. You're not going to get any more steps. You're going to stay where you're at, and the only increase you'll get is what those percentages of that step increase is. So the only reason people are going lower in steps is because we're now trying to get that salary structure in line and in competitive to what you have. I think to also address your very first question, and you're absolutely right, you know, we need salary schedules that are fiscally sustainable. Because unless the money tree is all of a sudden blooming in the backyard of City Hall, you do have limited resources, and we totally understand that. And so what you need to take a look at, there might be a time period, and I'll go back to 2008, when we had a recession. The question became, what do we put money on? Can we put money on anything? We may not be able to put money on both the schedule and the step, but let's just put some money on the schedule. We'll put 1.5% on the schedule, and we'll increase, and everybody stays at the step that they're at. Or we don't put any money on the schedule, and we advance them a step. You know, so you're going to have to make some of those choices when you have some economic downturns or some economic issues that are going to affect the system. I will tell you that the West Coast, all of our Washington, Oregon, clients have very large step systems. I mean, the percentage between steps is, you know, it's not unheard of to have, you've got your 4%. I just finished a couple others in Washington right now where they're 5% steps. I will tell you that the Midwest, the South, have gone away with that large of percentage steps. And now, you know, most of the schedules like we're building are 2.5%, maybe 3% steps because it's costly. But in your neck of the woods, this is very, very common. And so this schedule is not out of line with what we see with your comparable organizations.
Could I respond?
I hope I answered your question, sir.
Yeah, you mind if I respond to a couple things you said?
Oh, please do.
So if you talked about denying step increases, that's viewed as an adverse action based on performance. I don't think you can do that without just cause. That's based entirely on performance because that's what the salary is based on. But the other thing I'm thinking of is as we move forward, why wouldn't you just, if we're that far behind, then you don't send people backwards and say you're only at a step 5 now and your expertise actually is you've been in the job for 10 years. Just increase the schedule by the percentage that we're behind. It's real simple, and just do it that way. You're at step 10 and you say it's step 10, and since you didn't get the increase last year or 2 years ago or 5 years ago, then that salary gets adjusted all the way through. You stay at the same step, and you call it good. Move on.
If you have the money, go and do it. I'll tell you, you won't be able to afford it. You won't be able to put the person on the step that is close to their years in the position. We don't look at years of service, we look at years in position. Very rarely can you have an organization do it. I know Mandy has done some calculations to get people at least to the market rate, and I don't know what that cost is, but I'll tell you, to put people on the step closest to what their years in position is, you can double or triple that amount of money. So if you've got the money, go for it.
So then the
But I
other,
just don't
so
think
then the
that's
other
fiscally
option we have
sustainable.
is to do that and to do it incrementally over time and not do it all in 1 year.
And I don't think I don't think it's being proposed, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think it's being proposed that you try to fix it all at one point in time. I think what's more important is that you get folks that are close, that have, more than 5 years, they need to be at or above step 6. I don't think you need to put them on the step closest to their years in position, because again, the steps don't necessarily represent years in position. I could start at step 3 because of my experience level. That doesn't mean I've been here for 3 years. That means I had the knowledge and stuff to start at step 3. So I think we need to be very careful if we start equating steps to years.
Yeah, I would
Equating where you are in the
equate
market.
steps to skill. That's why they're there.
Okay, we
That's why
have
the pay range is there.
Rick and then Rob.
Thank you, Dr. McGrath. I think it's really important to say you're recognizing the value of the employees we have in our city, and we have very good employees here. And I think I want to compliment you on rearranging the step schedule, that you've looked intensively at compression, and also you've expanded the town inventory. The other factors I'd like to see as we look at these positions, what is the responsibility of each individual? How many employees do they have under them? Do they have certificates or special experience that we need to recognize? And I realize you have some of this in your report, but I guess I would like to see that attached to each individual position. And also, you have an inventory years of service, and I would like to know those numbers, and I'm not sure you're able to provide those tonight, but that would be part of the recognition I would like to give the employees. Thank you.
The point factor system does take into account the areas that you have just mentioned. So we do look at education. We look at education in 2 components. We look at what's required for the position and what's preferred for the position. We also look at supervision, leadership and supervision. There's a number of categories that say either I'm a project manager, which means I don't technically supervise anybody, but I'm in charge of large projects, and so I have to pull together vendors and contractors and departments and things of that nature, all the way up to I'm a department head, and there's a number of categories within there. So obviously, if I'm supervising, 10 people versus supervising a supervisor and folks, I have direct and indirect folks do that. I do look at their years in position, but that is something that Mandy has done by making any type of recommendation by saying, okay, I just place them on the step closest to what they're currently making. I did not look at their years in position. I have that, but it was not a factor in your initial base costing. And I believe Mandy did some work to say, okay, I'm going to look at the years of position and maybe move them up a couple steps or get them around market. And Mandy can speak to that.
Yes, that's correct, we did. I
Thank you.
added it.
So just a couple questions. One is for Dr. McGrath. My understanding, actually, and Mandy or Aaron can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that actually this entire increase or this entire adjustment was proposed to be done in 1 year, which is why I guess the Budget Committee, you asked the Budget Committee to budget the full amount yesterday to do all this in 1 year. Is that accurate? Aaron or Mandy?
To make, the recommendation to the Budget Committee was to afford council the flexibility. It's council's direction on the final say of what this proposal is. But we
Well,
did.
yeah, I understand.
We did propose it, we took the proposal from Dr. McGrath with the placement closest to the step where they currently are, where it did not result in a pay decrease, but it was placed as closest to where they are. But then we had to evaluate around it.
I'm sorry, I'm not trying to cut you off, but that wasn't my question. My question was, the first time when Aaron first put this on the consent calendar and expected it to be passed in March, it was for the full amount, the 1.2 million. There wasn't going to be any discussion. That was what we were asked to do. We were asked to do it all in 1 year. Is that not true?
Well, actually, sir, it ended up on the consent agenda when Councilor Marshall made that motion. It wasn't at staff's
Okay.
direction.
Maybe I'm mistaken.
So, yes, I think it was done similarly to how you do all of your other collective bargaining agreements. We ask for parameters, you provide us parameters, and we move forward with the implementation of that. We treated the non-bargaining exactly the same.
Okay.
So we have not asked for anything different, and non-bargaining has not been asked to be treated anything different than the way council treats the bargaining units. The proposal was established to be implemented to address the 3 issues that Mandy was mentioning, so we can address that immediately and specifically deal with the succession planning and the compaction issue that we have.
Again, that goes beyond what my question was. My question was, it was proposed originally to do it all in 1 year. Now, maybe I was mistaken. I didn't understand that it was Councilor Marshall that proposed that. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's the first time I've heard that. Interesting if true. But I guess the question that I have for Dr. McGrath, what might be for a compensation system that will say the same degree out of alignment as you might perceive the grants passed to be out of alignment, or the amount of correction that is needed, what would be a typical number of years that you would see to implement this degree of change or improvement? What's a typical number of years to make this kind of change?
Again, it's going to be dependent upon the financial ability of the organization. We try to say that you try to do it as much as you can in the first year. I do have some organizations that'll take 2 years. I've only had one, and they were significantly below market than you were, and a much larger organization. The longest one ever was 5 years. Keep in mind, the longer that you take to implement it, the more it's going to cost. Because you have to continue to be increasing those salary schedules, and you might have to do multiple steps in the placement to avoid any of that in-range compression. So I'd say 1 to 2 years is probably typical. I think the most expensive one I ever had was a county in North Carolina, and they did it all at once, and it was $9 million. I did not recommend that, by the way. It was all financial. The longer that you don't fix the problem, the more it's going to compound and become a bigger problem and become more expensive.
Thank you. So the county in North Carolina you mentioned, what was the population of that county? Do you know? Approximately?
No, I don't. But it was that $9 million was only to fix the public safety departments, police and fire. So it wasn't for the entire county. But it did make my book of the most expensive implementation.
Thank you.
In 25 years.
Some counties have almost the population of our entire state. So trying to just get an idea of what you're talking about. So the other question that I have, and I'm just not sure, you know, and I don't know if I'm just very briefly going to use an analogy, like in sports, you can look at data and analytics on a particular athlete or particular team, and then you actually watch them play, and do they pass the eye test? They're supposed to be a good player because of the stats. Do they actually look like a good player? So now I understand, so I guess my question is, the eye test on this, for me, or the initial reaction I have on this proposed plan, I'm having trouble understanding why my eyes don't necessarily line up with what some of the data would show. So for instance, when we've asked a couple of times, I think, for examples of compression, The examples that, or the examples of when a supervisor could possibly be making less than the people they supervise, a subordinate. So the examples that we've been given so far are the ones that I remember, then we may have been given others. It's been a few percent where a subordinate could, especially a subordinate who is at maybe high on the step ladder, could actually be making more than their superior. And that's been a fairly small percentage and wouldn't require that much to alleviate and adjust, and it would seem, okay, that seemed really reasonable to me. But then when we go up the ladder and we look at, the department heads and we look at the city manager, for instance, I don't understand why, when we look at, because my understanding is part of what we're trying to do here is to have pay that's within the market range. That's part of what we're trying to do. Another thing what we're trying to do is address compression issues. Right? With the compression issues that the examples we've been shown, the compression has been I thought, fairly small. Now maybe people who are in HR think that's big, but we've been shown examples that are small. But then when we get up to the upper levels of our pay scale, we've got situations where currently the manager is making, we'll say 25% more than his closest subordinate. And so I'm not sure, I don't understand why we've got any issues with upper level management that are making within market range right now, according to the data that Mandy showed us. They're making within market range. There's no one that's coming up close behind them as far as compression, and yet they also are being designated for large raises, very large raises, 10, 20% or more, when the only compression that we've actually been shown to date has been on very, very, very small percentages. So how do we go from small percentage compression, legitimate problems, to very large raises at the top end? I'm not following that. Maybe you can help me understand that.
Well, I'll let Mandy chime in as well. I think you're talking about two different things. One is we're looking at salary ranges, and we're looking at the salary range. I'm not looking at the person. I'm looking at what the market, the points, the compression, et cetera, are telling me about the salary range. And so the salary ranges need to become competitive. We went from a very non-competitive salary schedule to now recommending a very competitive salary schedule. So again, we're going to go to that question that somebody had earlier, how did I get from step 10 to step 5? It's because you've shifted your entire schedule to be more competitive. If we're looking at individuals, that there may be situations, just as you said, where the difference may not be that significant, or the difference may be, enough that it's palatable. So I think you're kind of mixing two different types of methodologies, looking at what the construct of the structure is. Where does that compression alleviate? Where does that overlap alleviate? I believe you said, and I said, you might have somebody that has a much longer tenured employee that for a while will make more than the supervisor will. But at what point does that supervisor's pay range then move so that it becomes worthwhile for me to take on those additional responsibilities? So I look at it from strictly an infrastructure pay range system, and how do we make sure that we minimize compression with your infrastructure? Obviously, people are always going to have, we're always going to have some situations where someone's going to make more and whatnot, someone gets more overtime than another, and if those are sporadic types of issues, those are things you can deal with. But if they're occurring on a regular basis, that's telling you that there's a problem with your salary structure and how it's constructed. I hope I made sense.
It makes sense in one level. Another sense, again, when we have, and I'm only picking this particular example out because it's very easy for us all to see, when we have someone who's basically making within range right now, our city manager, from what I understand, within range, with, again, no one coming up right behind them, somehow that your fix here, your plan, would then put him way above the market average, and that would be part of your improvement or part of your solution. And to me, that's as big a problem, or at least a very large problem, if not as large a problem, as what we have right now. So you may have a solution, or my understanding of your solution, and again, I might be very limited in my understanding, but my understanding of your solution is that what's going to fix one thing is going to then throw the top end that same degree out of kilter. So we've got, you know, solutions that you're helping us with, and you're creating problems that may be just as big. So I'm having really trouble, and specifically, rather than being vague, if we have a manager that's making within market range, roughly 195 or whatever, and market range I think was 198 or something like that, if my figures are accurate, and then this proposed improvement or plan, or this proposed fix, the medicine, so to speak, then puts him at 230 or 240, we've now created illness in a different part of the system. Can you explain that? What am I not understanding? Because it doesn't make sense to me.
I think I'm going to need to have Mandy step in because my placement was just to the step closest to what they're currently making. If I look at the city manager, since we're going to pick on him, looks like there's 12 years of service. So if the recommendation was to put them closer to the market rate, because they've been in that position for a longer time period, that's your in-range compression adjustment. That's not a market adjustment. And Mandy, can you help me out here?
Yeah, exactly. This is what Dr. McGrath was talking about with the infrastructure. So it's not just the market range, and I think if I understand you correctly, sir, you're talking about the specific pay range for the city manager and how that position is placed in the salary schedule.
What I'm talking about is the proposed raises. My understanding is that currently the city manager is within the market range, and after we would solve this problem, and I acknowledge that it appears to be there's problems in our existing system, after we would solve this problem, we would then have someone who is way above the market range. And to me, that's as big a problem. So to me, this particular system is highly flawed and needs really much more scrutiny. And I'm not sure exactly, I have some ideas as what we might be able to do to give it that further scrutiny if what I'm saying is accurate. But if the 190 something or other that's within range turns out to be way above range, and you can use all the different terminology you want, all the explanations you want, again, I'm using the eye test. You got a lot of data, a lot of words, a lot of statistics, and a lot of education on your side of the room. I get that. I'm just a volunteer, you know what I mean? But the eye test tells me something's way wrong with the solution. So, you know, I need some help bridging that gap.
Yeah, we did not place any employees into step 9 or 10, and we've discussed that previously. We did move some of the people, as we had talked about, Dr. McGrath has talked about, based on that in-step compression and based on years of service. And education and seniority is part of a bona fide factor. So as we're looking at that and we're placing direct reports and other employees in the pay bands, we're looking at that total equal pay bona fide factor for placement, not based on the years of service, or he would have been at 10, but placed internally in that. Did that help?
Okay, I'm just going to say one more thing and then I'll shut up because it may just be that I'm the densest guy in the room and you're never going to get through to me. But on the chart that you guys have given out, okay, right now, city manager is at about 194. I think the market average is 198, and the proposed yearly wage with Dr. McGrath's solution here, and somehow this is not step 10 either. This, I think, on step 8, as you're talking about, he would go from 194 to 234.
I see. I'm connecting
So
with you,
isn't
sir.
that to me, that's as big a problem as these problems that we have now, even though it's only one employee, which makes it a
Yep.
smaller problem, a much smaller problem, because there's only one employee. But it throws it, it's completely out of range. The fixed, the fixed creates another illness.
But market average is only one component that's used in a compensation study, and we have the compression with the bargaining units below. Dr. McGrath, can you speak to that methodology for us?
Well, I think what he's saying is, the placement on step 8 is that appropriate based upon whatever methodology you utilized to place people within the system. So I think we have to go back to what was the methodology that you just decided to say, okay, how does somebody get to, and I'm going to pick on somebody else instead, how does the police captain, get placed on the step schedule, or captains? Typically there's and I'm sure Mandy utilized some sort of set of rules that said, okay, if you have X amount of years, if you have X amount of education, you should be at least around this step, and then placed people appropriately. So it's not the system itself that's the issue. It's trying to ensure that the in-range compression is taken care of. So it's not a symptom of the system. It's really what rules do you want to have in which to place people on the appropriate step, using some of your pay equity types of issues involved. So once that position is placed on that step, then they're just going to move forward. And obviously once you get to step 10, you're not going to get anything more unless that pay range increases, which hopefully will occur on a regular basis.
Thank you. We will have me and then Indra. I just wanted to say really quickly that I did not ask for this to be put on the consent agenda. I do know that I was a part of and maybe instrumental of taking it off the consent agenda, but I just wanted to make that clarification. And really quickly, I know that Rob asked this question. It was news to me as well, hearing that, no one was asking you to do this all at once, and that is also what I understood that we were going to be doing. So if you could very quickly, Victoria, just tell us what is when there is something like this that is happening where things are out of whack, what are 1, 2, 3 at the most things that generally cities would do to correct the issue?
Most cities are going to try to correct as much as possible within the first year. And obviously, again, I'm going to put the caveat on it's still obviously due to fiscal constraints and what's going on within that community. We do have folks that will take 2 years. The more you take, if you're going to take more than 2 years, you're probably going to be spending more than if you had fixed it all at once. And so each year that you extend trying to fix it, it's going to compound the problem and it's going to become more expensive. So if you have the fiscal resources and to get it done, just get it done. Rip the Band-Aid off and do it. And that way it's not hindering your budget on a regular basis. Obviously, if you can't rip off the Band-Aid, and I'm not familiar with your resources, nor do I even want to try to get into that. That's not my area of expertise. Try to lump off as much as you can chew. If saying, okay, let's make a rule, and I don't know Mandy's rules, but we'll do something on our end that says, okay, we're going to move people, X amount of steps extra if they have this many years in the position, but we're going to cap it at step 7, or we're going to cap it at step 8. So there's nothing that says, I think you're looking at 2 things. Number one, making sure the structure gets in place. The second piece would be then your implementation phase, and do you need to, and again, I don't know if you need to or not, maybe adjust the implementation and say, okay, we're only going to cap you to this amount. And again, I don't know what Mandy Amy did, and I trust her judgment with working with the city manager and fiscal resources on that. So the longer you take, the more expensive it's going to become.
Okay, thank you very much. And Indra?
I would just like to ask, obviously, part of this is recruitment and retention, which is what you were talking about. So I would like to know if we have actual data, like what are our retention and recruitment numbers as compared to these other cities? Are we having much many more issues with that than these cities were compared to, and do we have that data?
That's not data that I have readily available, but I have provided council some information on the hard-to-fill positions for recruitment and the number of days that those positions were vacant. Some of them were vacant, more than a year. I believe one was even vacant more than 2 years. So that is part of the challenge that we're trying to address with this.
Are the positions that are vacant for longer periods typically the same positions year after year after year?
In our case, several of the positions have been vacant many times, several times over. For example, the city attorney is a position that went vacant, we filled it, and then it went vacant again. So there can be a pattern there.
And then one.
I'll answer that question, if you don't mind, I'll answer that question kind of globally, not necessarily for your city in particular. You're going to see ebbs and flows in positions that are difficult to fill. For a while, and I know it was not a part of this study because I didn't deal with the union folks, but you look at 2-3 years ago, we really were having problems with trades positions and even administrative assistant positions. Now those have kind of leveled off, and we're really seeing a push on problems filling more of your professional technical positions. Attorneys are very difficult at this point in time, whether it's a city attorney or whether I'm looking with counties and I'm looking at prosecutors and public defenders. It's just becoming a bidding war when it comes to attorneys. So I think there's more of an ebb and flow of what it is. But I think in your case, part of the positions, and it's not the only reason, but part of the reason some of these positions have been vacant so long is because of the salary structure and the salary range, and is attractive enough for them to come to you.
And just one more. So can you speak to why we're here today talking about why are there such discrepancies in some of the positions that you're proposing?
Are you asking me or Dr. McGrath?
Well, that would be you, because
okay.
it would be the history
Yeah.
of our city. Like, how did we get here to where there is such a large discrepancy that we're being asked to increase some salaries by so much?
That's a great question. The first answer that comes to mind is our last classification and compensation study was done in 2006 and 2007. So this employee group has not had a study completed for nearly 19 years. And the adjustments that they've been receiving mostly are based on the cost of living increases. And with the information that I shared with you previously, we had a disparity among the employee groups in the cost of living increases provided. So that led to some of the compression that we're experiencing. So that's the internal factor. And then externally, we haven't had a market study completed in nearly 19 years. So we did not keep up externally with the market.
So we wait almost 20 years to do a study before we fix salaries for people?
I published the RFP within 6 months of hire. Thank you.
Okay, and I have Joel and then Rob, but I also wanted to say that you have done an amazing job bringing this information to us, so thank you, Mandy. So Joel, then Rob.
Well, good discussion, and it's evident that some action is needed. I have not seen, I've seen two examples of compression. And I don't know if it's 20 positions, I don't know if it's 50 positions, I don't know if it's 2 positions. And I do know what caused the compression, and I do know that it needs to be fixed. I just don't know, do you know how many positions right now in our structure have compression?
Not off the top of my head. I can tell you, looking forward, one of the things that scares me is I'm going into bargaining with IFF, Teamsters, and GPEA this summer, and where we are now is not going to improve through that bargaining process.
Right, and that's always going to be the case every year, so that hasn't changed. I just wonder right now, what is the amount of compression that how much do we have? Do we have 2 positions? Do we have 5? Do we have 15? Or we don't know?
I don't have that right in front of me because I did put all of your salary schedules together, and I'm looking at it from a salary schedule position versus, looking at individual pay. But when I look at your salary schedules, and I can't find, what happens when you've got too many computer screens? You can't find which one you have. We've got a lot of positions. I'm looking at 3 pay grades right now where there's basically less than $200 between each pay range. And so the question is, why do we have all these pay ranges and we're not aligning those pay ranges across all 3 schedules? So you could have a pay range that's going to start at $63,000 on one schedule, and it's $61,000 on the next schedule, and it's not so much that the problem is you've got 3 different schedules that are all built on different premises, and when you connect them all together is when we really start having the salary ranges are just all bumping in together. And that's just for the non-bargaining. You then add the union ones, which were able to receive larger cost of living increases than the non-bargaining, and now we're starting to mesh all those together. So I can't tell you how many positions, but it's the 3 different structures and the independence of those structures that are problematic. To keep yourself from getting into this position again, which is what I really hope you do, because I don't want you to spend all this money and then end up 3 to 5 years having to do it all again, is a couple things. Number one, you need to be very cognizant of what you're negotiating with your bargaining groups and doing the same or similar types of things with the non-bargaining, so we don't have that compression again between those positions. There's always going to be some years where it's going to happen a little bit, but what can you do to do that? The second of all is to, as I said, update those schedules on a regular basis. Annually look at it, and depending on what's happening with the cost of living, does it all the units need to have a 2%? Does it need to have a 4%? A lot of folks lost ground over the last 4 years because there was really high recession, and yet you could not increase your salary schedules to the level of recession. The other thing too is to periodically, every 3 to 5 years, depending upon the economy, kind of do a mini study. Go in and take the comps and say, okay, let's look at it. And maybe what we need to do is just tweak the schedule a little bit going forward. I call it, course corrections, where maybe we find, as you did with your current schedule, step 1 is no longer competitive. So we're going to drop step 1, and then the question becomes, do we add a step 11 at the top, or do we just now keep it steps 2 through 10? And that the market's is going to make those types of determinations. And if you do those types of things, you're not going to be in a position where you're correcting 19 years worth of decisions.
Yeah, I understand that. So the answer to my question that I heard was, we don't know, but from what you say, there's a lot of compression. Mm-hmm. That's what I heard you say, but we don't know.
Well, there were some changes with our structure also. You may recall that the battalion chiefs and the sergeants have petitioned to become represented for better pay and benefits.
Sure.
So that would have altered some of the figures of the positions in compression.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Rob.
So I just, the question I have is, part of when we looked at, and I don't have the graph with me, but the graph I guess that Mandy disseminated and I guess probably created was, it was a graph of, I think, COLA increases over the last decade or so between bargaining and non-bargaining and so forth. And I guess when I looked at that, there were two things that jumped out at me as being kind of I felt it was kind of a little bit of a misrepresentation. Maybe not a misrepresentation, but I think that it was easy to come to a conclusion that kind of maybe artificially supported the need for greater raises and may have even been increasing the compression argument. So in 25, all the bargaining groups got their COLA. The non-bargaining didn't.
Correct.
Now, the only reason the non-bargaining wouldn't have is because Mandy or the city manager didn't come to the council and say, we need a COLA this year. Because we didn't turn down any COLAs this year for anybody. So now that we didn't have a COLA this year, the disparity is even greater. And that was the doing of management. And again, it now makes it appear as if we've got a bigger problem than maybe we actually would have had we given the COLA this year. We can also go back to 2020. The non-bargaining, very generously, I thought at the time, they foregoed their raises because we were moving into COVID, and people were concerned that revenues might drop. And again, non-bargaining group generously forego their COLA, but now again, that's being essentially adding to this it's being essentially used to bolster this argument that we've got a bigger problem than maybe we actually do. Had there been a COLA in 25, in other words, had you actually asked for it, you probably would have gotten it. And had there been one in 20 as well, that was voluntarily given up, then this compression issue might not be anywhere near as big as it may appear, even though we're not even sure how big it is. You know, from Joel's question, how big is this issue? We're not even sure. But I really believe that had we done the COLAs both those years, we may be having a much smaller conversation right now. So it may actually, rather than necessarily needing this gross reorganization, which may be needed, and it may not have been needed. It may have been able to have been solved with appropriate COLA this year, and maybe going back and looking at what was missed in 20. But that really was a staff thing. In fact, you didn't ask for it either year.
Well, the first time I went before council, I did ask for a 3% COLA, but as we've revisited this without an outcome, we stopped asking for the COLA and we're just focusing on the wage schedule.
I'm not sure if we should be getting into trying to point fingers on whose problem it is and where we got to where we are today. Staff did take a leadership role to help alleviate an issue back in 2020, like you said, and foregoed any request for a cost of living, recognizing that for the community. And I greatly commend the department heads who took the lead on that, and the rest of the staff also followed. And then this year we have not asked for one because we are going through this process. Those 2 years alone would not make up the spread difference between some bargaining units that received over 30% over that time period and the non-bargaining receiving 12%. The real issue was two things. One, as the consultant has mentioned, there's a number of different salary schedules that we're trying to put together into one to fix a number of issues. The other is the compounding issue over the past 10 years where non-bargaining has consistently each year gotten less than the bargaining units. So it's taken time for us to get here, and it's no one's fault. That's just where we are today, and we're trying to come up with a solution.
Kathleen?
So what I'm hearing is that we have a big problem, and but that we can maybe manage this over a 1 to 2 year process. Before I can do any vote on this, I need to hear what that would look like. How can we manage this over an incremental process, these 1 to 2 years, that wouldn't put us way behind or put us in debt, you know, so that our revenues could balance out with this. Is that possible, Mandy, for you to do something like that for us?
It is possible. In the email that I shared with you all earlier this week, we had the costing out there for the lowest step placement. That is an option, and that would meet the compliance that we would have in demonstrating that the employer is taking measures to address any pay equity issues. So that is a very valid opportunity for us.
Rob?
Okay, well, I appreciate Kathleen's question. I just want to say that I'm in no way, shape, or form ready to move forward on this particular solution divided over, I don't care how many years, whether it's 2 or 10 years or 1 year. But I'm based to some degree on Joel's unanswered question about how much compression are we actually dealing with. I mean, I have a way that, I shouldn't say a way, but I have something that I feel could help us move forward in this situation if the time is right to talk about it, or we can talk about that in a little while.
Would you like to wait till after public comment on the issue and it comes back for, okay, thank you. Other questions from council? Eric?
I just want to say, you know, all the city workers are doing a great job. My big thing that I've heard from constituents and other basically Grants Pass individuals. Well, first off, the average Grants Pass salary is $50,000, closer to $51,000. That's asking those Grants Pass taxpayers to pay a huge amount of money out of their taxes that they've already, the economy's down, everybody is feeling it pretty bad. And I'm with a lot of what was discussed here with this huge amount. I heard that we have to rip off the Band-Aid. That's a big Band-Aid to rip off to get this fixed the way it's been explained here to us. I'm not in agreement with ripping off the Band-Aid because the revenue, I don't see it there. I know a lot of this was discussed at the budget committee, and it's again, with all the other issues that we have going on in Grants Pass, I don't know if that's going to be something that the public is in agreement with. They're going to look at us and go, what are you guys doing? So as it stands right now, I can't I can't agree with this, with what is being proposed. It's a big chunk of money, and I don't know if that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Any further questions from council? Well, I want to thank our presenters online, Victoria and Mandy. Thank you so much. And we will move on to public comment for this agenda item. Unless you had any further information you wanted to give us, Mandy?
I really am hoping for some directive tonight. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Are there people from the public who would like to speak on this agenda item? I don't see any comments. All right. Come on up. Or any asks? And as you come up, please state your name and where you live.
Byron Robertson, lifetime Josephine County residence. I just rushed here actually from work, sitting at work watching this online. And a couple comments. If you would run this as a business like I do, obviously I'm at work right now trying to find more work, do my bills, whatever. We have business owners on the panel. To ask for such an increase in 1 year is appalling. Everything we do is merit-based. And if you run a business like that, fiscally, it's responsible. What we're asking to do is fiscally irresponsible. To bump people up to this extent in 1 year would devastate most businesses. I know the city has a huge budget, but let's look at the merits of why we're increasing certain department heads. What have they done for us? As a business owner, I'm looking at an employee who walks in my office and says, hey, I would like a bump in pay. Okay, let's sit down and talk about what have you done for us? What have you accomplished? Not how many years you've been here, not what your education is, not this and that, but what have you done to grow within my organization to merit you that raise? So let's take a look at all the department heads. Let's sit down and list them. What have they accomplished? What do they deserve? Not because it's a market rate. We can't get people here because people can't afford to live here. The housing's too high. It's not because we can't pay them enough. Housing's too high. I have people who miss work every day because they can't find somebody who watch their kids because childcare is so high. Let's find the reasons that really why people can't afford to be here. Not because they deserve a $40,000 raise or a $30,000 raise. Let's just look at the merits. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, other comments from the public? Come on up. And please remember to state your name and where you live.
Nancy Lester, Grants Pass. I don't have anything to say that you already haven't thought about, I'm sure. And you've all heard from me already because I sent notes to you all. There's a lot of people in this room that are personally affected by what you're talking about, so that makes it difficult. And as I do, you all have a lot of respect for what they do, and their jobs are busy and difficult. But hey, I'm a senior citizen. I get a COLA, and I have to manage that, my budget every year with that. And so when you look at these very large increases that are in this plan, you're going to have to offset that from somewhere else within your budget. You're either going to have to raise revenues, which means increasing taxes. You're going to have to spend less, which means cutting somewhere else. And you've got huge financial decisions to make about the water plant, about compensation, a lot of other things that are going on in the community, and you want to start a municipal court. You don't have enough money for all of that. So somewhere, I guess the other thing is you could cut into the contingency, which is always a possibility, and that's something that you're going to need to look at as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments from the public on this issue? And make sure to state your name and where you live.
Oh, Chris, live in Grants Pass. I'm just maybe be a little confused about who your peers and constituents are. Our tax dollars pays your wages, right? Correct? Yeah. And you people pay taxes also, all of you, whom I love and appreciate. But the thing is, your tax dollars don't pay my wages. My tax dollars pay your wages. Therefore, I am, and the rest of these people here, we are your constituents and your peers. So I would pray that you check your moral compasses before you go ahead with these raises. All right? Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have other members who would like to, please come up and state your name and where you live?
Shoney Nelson, Grants Pass, Oregon. And as you guys tell, I'm kind of an ad-libber. I listen to what's going on, what people say. And what I see, I want to say like Councilor King, Councilor Pell, and a lot of you, okay? They're the two that come to mind. Sorry about that. I love the stories, Mr. King. I've listened to him. And you guys, to be honest, our police chief over here, you got a job I wouldn't want to have. And you got a lot of people saying that it's your fault when they don't even sit here to hear you guys talk, to hear things say, to hear things happen. Tonight, I'm presented with a bunch of stuff that I don't even understand. But what I will say, I did get some more understanding from your questioning. And what I got was you seemed to understand it more than anybody else. That's what I got from that. What I got from over here was, I don't know. I think there's a problem with that. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you. Are there other members of the public who would like to speak on this agenda item? Seeing no other members of the public who would like to speak on this agenda item, we'll bring it back to council for discussion. Indra and then Rob.
So I started out my career in teaching, and part of it was because I was so shy, believe it or not. I've never asked for a raise, ever. And I thought, how great, there's a pay step, and I just go up in salary, and I never have to ask for a raise. So that was good for me. And then I went into business and work and hire employees. I'm a huge believer in merit, and I do want to say we value all of our city workers, and this discussion has nothing to do with, for me, that we want to take anything away or not give it. I understand the bargaining is crazy. It's difficult because the people who go through bargaining get raises every year, no matter what, and some quite large. And so I understand that there's going to be a discrepancy over time, but you have to also look at what's sustainable for the resources that we have in our community. And so I would look at, I think an approach we should take, and we could not do that tonight, is really look at those positions, because I do believe some probably deserve some kind of raise and increase, and we should certainly reward those and bring them up. But others, I disagree, that need that much of an increase or step. So I would like to take a more customized approach to giving the increases.
Rob.
Yeah, I agree with that, Indra, and it's part of a suggestion I'm going to make. But first, I need to say that I think when you look at every, and it's so rare that council gets 100% of emails on any subject in agreement. There's always some, it could be 60-40, it could be 80-20. There's always some balance in the opinion. On this particular subject, unless I'm missing some emails, it was 100% do not give the raises. And, I got 2 calls this morning at my house. I mean, I don't even know who these people are. I assume they're constituents. Do not give the raises, okay? That's, so that's public sentiment. Now, I don't know if necessarily the public understands some of the details involved here and all the things that you might want to try to achieve with a fair pay plan. But this is like, from our constituents, this is a 100% no, 0. Do not, end of story. I think part of that, quite frankly, I know in my case what I had to balance, but part of that is the way that this was brought out. And I think that whoever it was that put this on the consent calendar, my understanding was it was the city manager. Tonight we heard that it may have been an elected official, but I don't know that to be true. But my understanding, putting this on the consent calendar in March immediately created an even greater adversarial relationship with the public and as a result with the council. So whoever put that, whether it was Aaron or anyone else, that was a giant mistake because, routine and non-controversial, which is supposed to be on the consent calendar, we've had 2 more months worth of data, 2 more months worth of Mandy answering our questions. We've had a highly credentialed consultant with us tonight, and it's still not routine or non-controversial. So this never was routine or non-controversial. And it really annoys me that somebody put it on. Now, what I have to do as a counselor, and I'm hoping the whole council can do, is we can compartmentalize our displeasure with any staff person who may have put this on the consent calendar, because that's only one person. And we have to look at maybe what's fair and reasonable for the other 50 who are also in this group. So I've got to move past the fact that this was mishandled in the most major way, and now we've actually got to see if we've got something here that we need to address. So with, I think some of the questions that Joel had earlier, and I think with Indra's suggestion, before this meeting, I was thinking, how are we going to come out of this? Because I don't think that we're going to get 8 counselors tonight that are going to be able to see clearly what to do here. I'm quite sure of it now. So what I'm going to suggest is that we have a very short-term, very focused task force. I'd like to see probably 2 counselors on it. I'd like to see 2 members of the general public. I could think of 2 people maybe that were on the budget committee that may be of help here. I'd like to see possibly the general public people, maybe have had experience with large payrolls, and together with Mandy and/or the city manager, I'd like to go through all 51 lines for all 51 positions and get a better understanding and be able to answer Joel's question as to exactly where is this compression, to what degree is it, which would then answer my question, which is if we've got just a few % of compression in a couple different places, how do we end up with a $40,000 raise at the top for the manager to be on step 8 and the ability to earn another $20,000 or so in the next few years as he goes to steps 9 and 10? That part at all doesn't pass the eye test for me. But going back to look at each individual line, a focused task force in a short period of time, I'd like to have a better idea of exactly who is not in market range, where the compression is, and what's causing the compression, because as we heard our consultant say today, it can be caused by different things, but I don't see any other way forward at this point. The last thing that I'd like to add, just one other thought for council to think about, is that we're always told that the strategic plan drives the budget process. And last night there was a couple people that had questions about how could we budget for this when essentially we're not respecting the strategic plan, meaning that on the top of our strategic plan is always what can we do for public safety? How can we optimize our public safety? We all know that last year that there was 8 positions that were asked for by public safety, 8 or 13, I can't remember. Maybe it was 8 in police and 5 in fire, I can't remember. But it was a lot of positions in public safety. And we're told that that's our top priority. Well, guess what? Last night at the budget, the city manager told the budget committee members, well, that's not really, that's not your concern. Don't be thinking about that. That's a council issue. We're being told that we're not going to have our public safety discussion until June 30th. Well, if public safety is actually number 1, I'm not exactly sure how this discussion leapfrogged it, and we're discussing it now before we've had our public safety discussion. But I'd like to see a task force that's focused, short-term, small amount of people, and I'd also probably like to have a follow-up discussion on this project after we've actually heard more about our public safety needs and wants and so forth, and see what that might cost. Because we could end up somehow spending money tonight, if we were going to do it tonight, and then 6 months from now going back to the public and saying, we need more money for public safety. What are they going to say? They're all going to say, well, you shouldn't have given the raises. That's where the money should have gone, right?
So are you proposing then
So I'm proposing that we have a short-term task force. I'd like to make a motion that we have a short-term task force. I'd like to see maybe 2 counselors, maybe 2 members of the general public that have had experience with pay plans at larger institutions, along with the HR director, and we go through each line and we get an explanation for exactly what each line, so we have a detailed understanding of exactly why we'd be doing these raises, and the public would have some idea of what the justification is, because right now, the public is just a hard no, but I'd like to have a better understanding that I could go back to the public with. So that's my motion.
Are there other counselors who would be interested in entertaining such a motion? Or did you make the most second? Okay. Any discussion from council? Joel?
Aaron wanted to say something. You want to say?
Yeah, sure. Based on what I've heard today and the passion behind all of this and the complicated issues that we've discussed, because there's many that I think are just hard to digest, I would highly recommend we continue to work with our consultant to be the one that facilitates those task force meetings. I think that would be extremely beneficial in this process. It also provides still a third-party, non-biased individual to be there to help facilitate it, so there's no optics of bias through this process. The second item is I wanted to make sure and clear up the comment that Councillor Pell mentioned about someone mishandling the consent agenda. For my 13 years here, anytime a collective bargaining agreement or non-bargaining salary has gone to council, it's always been on the consent calendar. It's put on the consent calendar. Council has an opportunity to review those and make a comment of, oh, we don't want to have that on the consent calendar. Let's have it as a council action item or et cetera. So there was no intentional mishandling. This was done according to standard protocol, over a decade standard protocol. This was just the same as what we've done before in the past. So I just wanted to clarify that. But my recommendation would be to try to amend the motion to have the consultant also help facilitate.
Would you be interested, Rob, in amending?
Yeah, I can amend that motion. I also need to respond to what Aaron said. As I've mentioned to you before publicly, when you try to act as though, or you portray this as the same type of thing that's ever been done before, there has never, ever been any raises of this magnitude done in the city of Grants Pass ever before. This is not the standard situation, and you know it. And the fact is, we've never had a situation where a manager is up for a $40,000 raise or other employees are up for a $20,000 raise. So if you want to call this the same situation that we've had in the last 10 years or so similar that you can't tell the difference of what should be on the consent calendar and what shouldn't, I think that we actually have a bigger problem, quite frankly. But I will amend my motion and say that if we can get the consultant, I would also like to add that it's been my experience in the 20 or more, 25 years I've been watching city council meetings, that with one exception that I can think of in 2015 with the PAVE report, I would say that Consultants 101 is very applicable, is that the person writing the check to the consultant generally gets the results that they want. So to say that a consultant is unbiased is, could be true, and we'd like to believe it's true, but it also is a little bit different than what I've seen. But yes, she would be the most, since she has the most understanding of the pay plan that she created, basically, I guess with Mandy's help, she would probably be the best person to be the person in the room providing the data because she knows the most about it.
All right, well, we have a motion on the floor to create a short-term task force, and it has been amended to include our consultant as the facilitator of that short-term task force. And we have a second, and so let's take a roll call. One last discussion, or maybe one last discussion. Okay, Joel.
Okay. I don't know if you ever read the book Extreme Ownership. It's by a military commander over in Iraq. Whatever situation he found himself in, he had to take responsibility for it. And he had to fix it. Okay? And it was tough. It was tough. Very good book on leadership. We need to own this problem. It's the council's problem. Part of moving forward, what I like about the task force. It removes Aaron and our resource director from an appearance of a conflict of interest because it's their salary. They come back to us and we fix it in what we think is appropriate. And we have some knowledgeable people that can do that. So I want you to know that I own it, and I think everybody else up here owns it, and we're going to fix it, and we're going to move forward, and it's going to be even better. Okay? And hold me accountable for that.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion items? Indra?
I just want to reiterate that we greatly value all of the staff, the city staff, and that we're just looking for an outcome that is satisfactory for staff, for council, and for our constituents.
All right. We'll take a roll call vote, and we'll start with Councillor Schloegel. Are you on the motion?
Could you restate the motion, please?
The motion is to create a short-term task force with the consultant who we heard from tonight as the facilitator of that short-term task force. I believe also 1 or 2 councilors and members from the community, 1 or 2, was a part of that motion as well. 2 and 2.
Is there a time frame?
Short-term, I think, would be...
My vision is that the task force could meet for a month or less, and that we could convene it as soon as possible.
For a month or less?
Yes.
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 And yes. And does staff have clear direction?
Yes, we do. Thank you, Council.
All right, thank you. So next up on our agenda is public comment. And this is an opportunity for the public to address the City Council on items not related to a public hearing or council action item for the council. The intent is to provide information that is pertinent to the city's jurisdiction. Each speaker will be given 2 minutes to address the council as one body, not to individuals. This meeting will proceed in an effective and courteous manner. Citizens and council members will be allowed to state their positions in an atmosphere free from slander, threats, or other personal attacks. Signs or placards, outbursts of applause, campaigning for public office, or other disruptive behavior will not be tolerated. If you have a question regarding any government-provided service or a current city policy, please contact the city manager's office in an attempt to resolve this matter. And so I have the cards here. And so up first we have Shoni, and please, when you do come up, state your name and where you're from.
Shoni Nelson, Grants Pass, Oregon. And what I want to speak of again is our nonprofits. And actually today, I went out with Park Watch today, and we were cleaning up Baker Park. And as I said, you know, I'm always kind of an ad-lib guy. Well, I found it really interesting that this is my 27th find of one of these. What is this? This is from Max's Mission. Okay? And this is a little bag, which is really interesting. Okay, let's go through some contents here. You've got Narcan. Now, to people that don't have insurance, this can be upwards of $80. Now, it's interesting that your addicts are the ones that have the most information on this. Your parents, your kids, they don't. I love this bag. This bag's really cool. Now, where did I find this bag? I found this bag hanging on a tree. I guess they grow there, okay? Where actually they don't. They're put there by the nonprofits so that your addicts can find them when they need them. I call it litter, okay? My kids found it. I didn't. I didn't think to look up this time. I don't know why. But I want to go into something else. One of our problems, in my opinion, they are armed. They are armed to get away with doing things illegal. Our cops, right? They have their hands tied by things like this. Nonprofits give a card. I wonder, I would like to know, if I may, of how many people, okay, the people out here in the seats, you guys probably already know, but of the Good Samaritan overdose law. Can anyone raise their hands? Do you know this one? Okay, we got one right here. We got one over there. I see two. Okay, I'm going to read it real quick. Hopefully I can get through. I'm running out of time. So it is a card that says, see an overdose, save a life. Oregon has a Good Samaritan overdose law. If someone is overdosing and you seek medical help for them, neither of you can be arrested or prosecuted for possessing drugs or drug paraphernalia, being in a place where drugs are used, violating probation or parole because of one or two outstanding warrants related to
All right,
one or two.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Up next, we have Del Aldridge. And please remember once again to state your name and where you're from.
I think I got it after 3 years being here. Woke up this morning, went down to my work to open the doors at 10 o'clock. Drove past Baker Park, and there was a big sign, closed park. I'm like, wow. So I drove on down there. And boy, you talk about a mess. People working, dumpsters being full, tents being dragged out, people pulling away, druggies going both ways outside, heading to the other parks. So I said, hey, how about, I'm from Park Watch, and I got a guy from the Boatnik people. I said, how will we come by today and clean up after you guys? He goes, who are you? I said, I'm with Park Watch. We clean up, fine tune the park. He said, we're doing it now. I said, well, we'll get behind you and did it even better. And I said, I'll be back at 5. Well, forgot council meeting tonight, so I scheduled it at 3, and 10 bodies and 2 kids showed up. And we went through and found so much paraphernalia. Now, they're picking up needles, but they don't pick up the caps, they don't pick up the foils, and you could pick a foil up and a kid will be dead that quick. We have a container about this big full, and it was just a quick cleaning. It wasn't good, it was just a quick cleaning. I just don't know. And here's the interesting part. There was 3 dumpsters at that place, 20, 30 feet long. 2 of them disappeared. They still filling the 3rd one up. There was 5 or 6 people there at 2 o'clock. They started that morning and it just finished at 2 o'clock, getting the park fairly clean. We still pulled out sleeping bags, tents, jackets, blankets, everything you can think of. Bottom line is, please, these places where you're getting the rest done, I don't know what lawyer you have working on it, but man, come on, get the 4 places done, get them out of the parks, keep Tessie clean after Boatnik ends. Because it took all those people all day today cleaning it, along with our people out there from 2 o'clock, a couple showed up early, till 4. And it's amazing. I sent you all the pictures, the before and after. Incredible. The park is not clean, but we'll keep working on it.
Thank you. And next up, we have Patrick Rooney. Patrick? All right, then next up, we have Tony Webb.
Thank you. So do I do anything like touch anything or no? Go ahead, okay. Okay, so, whoa. Okay, so I'm here, and I emailed the counselors, but I also brought copies here for the other people, which Karen Freck, maybe you can give to them. So what I'm doing is bringing here a potential part of the solution for the homeless. There's a large motel at the north end of Grants Pass, and the owner, I've talked to him, he's interested in working with the city and the homeless service providers in using the property, the whole property, to alleviate the homeless situation. And it would be a very attractive leasing, long-range leasing proposal. The unhoused would be off the streets and out of the parks. The property is 1.37 acres. There's also plenty of room for additional module structures if you need them. There's already the infrastructure there, the washer, dryers, showers, food center, room for counseling offices, job assistance. So anyway, I just came to to talk about this in a public forum because it's a lot easier. I know that some of the service providers watch the council meetings and they come to the council meetings, so it's easier to just talk about it here, and I'm happy to talk further about it to anyone. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. And next up, we have Kat Hamilton. And remember to restate your name and where you're from.
Hello, Kat Hamilton County. I wanted to start by saying thank you for Monday. I can't tell you how many people get in my face, and I ain't any of you guys. Why can't they do this? Why can't they do that? Thank you for Monday. Even on the news, people said, well, we don't know where to go. We don't know who to talk to. So there's a lot of misinformation, as you all know. Thank you. Interestingly, as I'm sitting here, I get this text. Okay, May 21st, 2025. Democrats block vote to repeal HB 3115 despite worsening homeless crisis. How much did the dumpsters cost today, you guys, for Baker Park? Is that taking away money from our law enforcement, from the raises y'all are talking about tonight? The state's not doing squat for us. Somebody asked the other night, why can't we sue the state? Well, it's going to take years. And you know what? Maybe somebody needs to start something to show the people of their town who are living in this that we mean business. We can't keep living like this. Yes, county, this is my city. I shop here. I live here. I try to bring my son here. The state's got to step up. The state's got to do something. And blocking 3115, repealing it, what are we supposed to do? And maybe if you threw something at the state, I know it's paperwork and it's money and all this, but gee whiz. And it would make how many of the people in this city feel like, hey, you guys are listening. I know you're listening. I know your hands are tied, but something thrown positive at us might open some ears and get some of them off of our tails, shall we say. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Kate Hucker. And please remember to restate your name and where you live. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Kate Huckert. I live on 5th Street, right across the street from the expanded homeless encampment, and you've heard from me a few meetings now. So last meeting, we talked about my $10,000 in expenses for my safety and security and fencing and signs and such. And also my temporary ask for 2 parking spaces in front of my home for my business so that you don't squeeze me out and put me out of business. I've heard nothing from you. I did go back and listen to the rest of the meeting after I left, and I was surprised and I really appreciated that several of you spoke up on my behalf and that also made some preliminary motion for my spaces. But it did also sound like it was going to get buried in red tape, and I want to let you know I've heard nothing about it. So I'd really like for you to do something on my behalf. For what you've done to me and my business and my family and my home, which I've already talked to you about. What we're dealing with right now is I've got city employees parking in both spaces in front of my house. 1 or 2 of them takes up 2 spaces, and it feels kind of spiteful. And I don't need that. I need your help. Construction is clogging the street. Many of the guys do park in the church parking lot, but some don't, especially if they're running late. Then we've got abandoned vehicles. So those are sometimes people sleeping in their cars. There's people that live in the camps, they leave their cars. And we've got car campers. And we also have camp visitors who are a tremendous nuisance. Some are do-gooders, some are helpers, a lot of drug dealers. A lot of them roll up with really loud thumping, explicit language. They leave their doors open. They yell for the person they're coming to see. It's constant, really stressful chaos, and it's making me ill. So I'm really asking for your help, and I want to talk about precedent that you're setting by putting your homeowners and your business owners in danger. You're setting a precedent that you don't care, and you're not honoring our requests, and you're not responding, and that's a precedent that I'd like you to look at, and I'd like you to fix it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Next up, we have Mike Servant.
Thank you. Mike Servant. I live with her right across from the camp expansion. I understand why you guys felt like you needed to do something quickly to get out from under the injunction, and I know that somehow this seemed like a good idea, and I heard at the meeting the other night how this site was chosen in part because it impacted the fewest number of people. I don't think any of you appreciated how much that would concentrate the stress on those few people that you affected. Okay, you spared a lot of people, and you put it all in our front yard, and we've heard nothing. We complained last time and the time before about a complete lack of communication. That continues, and that persists. What I can't understand, especially since going forward in your long-term plan for the solution, that this needs to be a managed site, okay? That's probably one of the criteria of the solution. Why isn't this site managed? I can't understand that. I've not gotten a satisfactory answer from anybody. You would never build a 150-bed prison in the middle of town and have no warden. This is absolutely insane. Why is there not supervision or some kind of monitoring? There are cameras that no one's watching. Why should we have to call in 3, 4, 5 times a day for disturbances when it's happening right under the camera? I don't understand why that's my responsibility as a citizen, right? You're not paying me to be a police monitor. Why can there not be public security or some sort of private security or someone? Heck, find a teenager for a summer job to watch a screen. That's all they do all day anyway. Like, I don't understand why you can't have someone monitoring the screen so we don't have to police it, okay? It's completely unreasonable. We called 5 times over 3 days for the same couple fighting, okay? Please come out. They can't do anything because they can't declare it a public a disturbance because 3 different people don't complain about it. You conveniently put it where there's only one house, ours, so we cannot even get that done. This is unreasonable, and you guys there needs to be some communication. There was a motion that passed for parking for us. We've heard nothing, okay? We are tired of it. Thank you.
Thank you. And last up tonight, we have C.R. Kincaid, or is that Kincaid? No Kincaid? All right, I think that concludes public comment, and thank you all for your comments. And next up, we have the consent agenda items. Very, very quickly, want to make sure to reiterate that I do not set the consent agenda. The consent agenda are items included are of such routine nature that without controversy, so that they may be approved with a single action. And there are no starred items on the consent agenda tonight. So we have on consent agenda items A through J, and looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda as written, A through J. Do I have a motion to?
I make the motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Okay, I saw Rick and Seth. So we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as written, items A through J. And we'll take a roll call. And we'll start with Joel.
Yes.
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 And yes, and so the consent agenda passes unanimously. And the next item on our agenda is matters for mayor and council and staff. And so do we have any comments or concerns or items of discussion from council? Rob?
So my recollection of the last meeting was the same as the gentleman who spoke last, that we gave staff direction to basically create a no parking zone in front of their house except for their clients. Aaron, did you think that something else happened in the last meeting, or? I'm sorry. Okay. I guess nothing's, I guess maybe we'll get an answer when he comes back in. Thank you.
Oh, okay, thank you. And Joel, did you have, okay.
I just had a short comment about freedom. We live in a free country. Freedom allows the common individual to do uncommon things. And so when I look at Mint and what they've done without government funds, when I look at what other people have done in terms of caring for their fellow people without government funds, the freedom, when I look at our economy and how it's working, it all stems that we have that freedom. The best example I have is Benjamin Franklin, who was a peasant over in Europe. He had no freedom, and he was picking crops, and he came to America. He was free, and he did a lot of uncommon things. So let's stay free, and may you, as a common person like me, do really uncommon things and go out there. And as the Jewish rabbis said about 2,000 years ago, you go out there and you sew your community together. And we do it as a free nation.
Thank you, Joel. Do we have other counselors? Indra.
So I'm going to address a few things from the comments, but the nonprofit, so a few meetings ago, we had an ordinance or a resolution, maybe ordinance before us about nonprofits in the parks, and it had rules, but that was pulled back due to potential legal issues with it, and it's my understanding we were going to revisit that at some time. I, too, live close, and I see there's constantly cars pulling up and unloading stuff, unloading all kinds of things that end up all over town. And I really think we need to get a handle as much as we can legally to what's being given out to the homeless in our community, because it's, I know at my business, I clean up constantly, and things that are given out freely are all over town. So I would like to see that brought back, perhaps at our next workshop, and we could talk it through and see what we can do or not regarding the nonprofits. Just FYI, the hotel, I am, just for other counselors' information, I'm a hard no on any site or shelter in our downtown corridor, period. And then I was going to mention the parking space. That's okay. Okay, I just wanted to point out that our own representative, Yunker, is the one that brought that repeal of 3115 to the floor, and I just wanted to appreciate him for that. To me, it went down 28 yes votes, and they needed 31. So it's so close. And to me, it's not a partisan issue. We all suffer. Democrat, independent, non-affiliated, Republican, we all suffer. So it's very close. It's my understanding it can and will be brought up again. So I just encourage everyone and the public to write to get that bill repealed. Thank you.
All right, do we have other counselors? Kathleen?
Well, after our meeting Monday night, I was talking to some folks in the parking lot, and somebody mentioned that ODOT owns the bridges, and that they could be maybe helpful in cleaning up, like the cleanup that happened today, that possibly they could add some leverage to that, and that they could even make it so that people couldn't get in there and camp and do what they're doing right now while we're under this injunction, while we're under this 3115. Is it possible that we can contact ODOT and see what help they can give us?
Yeah, we have regular meetings with them. We can have a discussion. I don't know about Baker Park because it's all floodway through there, so they may not be able to do too much there, but the other ones possibly. But we'll definitely have a conversation.
Any other counselors? Do we have any comments from staff?
Well, did we have a follow-up from Aaron about the parking
right, yeah, I think Aaron
situation?
has a
Because I
follow-up
thought
on
the
that.
last
Thanks.
meeting, we gave you guidance to work with them to create a parking zone in front of their house. Is that not
Yes,
accurate?
I went out there to talk to them and let them know that the no parking signs and markings on both theirs and across the street are scheduled to go in before the end of this week, sometime at the end of this week.
Thank you, Aaron. And I think, Stephanie.
To provide an update on the humanitarian ordinance, that was put a little bit on a back burner because we're trying to revamp it to make it a little less controversial in the ways that we were talking about. I don't know that putting it on the next workshop would be reasonable, given what else we have on that workshop, because we're coming back to talk about the grant program. But it is not far down the task list. It'll come back to you as soon as we can.
Oh, thank you, Stephanie. Other staff? Oh, yeah, Jason.
I actually have 2 items for you. Excuse me. And you guys had a tough meeting. Thank you for all of the deliberation. The first item is I just wanted to get clarity around the decision, the direction that I received from you on Monday. And make it clear that if we do move forward with the rate increase, we're going to issue the notice to proceed to the contractor immediately so that he can start construction. And when I walked away, somebody had asked me that was just watching the meeting remotely. That was kind of my understanding of what I was asking for, but they said maybe I wasn't clear enough. So I did want to come back to you and make it clear that that was what I was asking. And if that is not your intention and that we should wait until after the rate increase is implemented, I will hold off on issuing the notice to proceed. Otherwise, we will issue the notice to proceed, and the contractor is ready to start mobilizing in the next, by June 16th.
All right, any counselors have, I saw.
Okay.
Oh.
That was kind of what, I appreciate that. And like kind of just a nod is good for me. I thought that I said it, but I wasn't clear, and I wanted to get back double clear because I didn't want to kick started and turn out that I did not make that clear to you. So with that, what I wanted to end on is a really uplifting note. You guys had a very, very tough meeting, but I wanted to go through our 2025 Drinking Water Week poster winners. We do this contest every year, and it gets out into our schools. And this is our first place winner, Sierra Parker, from kindergarten and 2nd grade. I just love when the pictures come in, and this is the theme is what water means to me. This is our 2nd place winner, Ruby Ball. And Olive Evans is our 3rd place winner in that age category, and she loves it, the ocean, because it holds our islands, which you can't go wrong with that. Great entry from our 3rd to 5th grade category. This is Zoe, and I'm going to say this wrong, and I apologize, Shiners. Great photo. A great heart with water flowing through it. We actually had 2 entries that were almost identical from separate folks. This is Zoe Liao. Also in our 3rd to 5th grade. She has a whole story about what water means to her, really thoughtful. 6th to 8th grade category, this is our 1st place winner, Kaylee Maddox. And our other heart that was a winner, and this is Vivian Ball. And 6th to 8th grade, still 3rd place, Hunter Morrison. And in our 9th to 12, we only had one entry, and this is Salila Oldham. Great entry. I know that it's probably hard to see, but there's a lot of detail with all the pipes inside the mountains and everything. Just a tremendous job. So it's a great contest. I want to share it with you. Kids really get involved. We get lots of entries, and we love sharing those with you. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. That was fantastic. All right, I'm looking for a motion.
I'll motion to adjourn.
And I have a second. All those in favor, thumbs up. All right, thank you.